And that's it for now. I'm going to ask Steve Frank to come on up and share about La Voix d'Evangile.
So less than 10 minutes. We're going to come down. Yeah. We're going to go with the slides instead. So, in a world that desperately needs Jesus. Let's hope this works. What's happening? Whoops, went too far. Okay, here we go. Okay, so La Voix d'Evangile is the voice of the gospel, and it's a vital part of the extensive ministry of Mission Go, which used to be known as Global Outreach Mission. The province of Quebec is home to 8 million people, actually almost 8.5 million now. Yeah, it's going on its own. I don't need the clicker, right? Okay, so close to half the population of Quebec live in or around Montreal, within a 30-kilometer radius of Montreal. There's about 4 million people. And it used to be the second largest city, but now it's actually the fourth largest in the world. And our office is on one of the main streets of Chateauguay, Principal. Some of you have come to visit a couple years ago, and as soon as the restrictions are lifted, we'd love for you to come again. The radio is an effective way to reach those who are seeking the Lord. And right now we're on 2 stations in North America as well as 2 stations in the south of France. Our speaker is Michel Martel, and he began in January of 1984. So it's 37 years that he's been the speaker of La Voix d'Evangile in Quebec. At the end of each broadcast, we offer a New Testament or a book, and people can write in or phone us for that. And many listeners are following Bible correspondence courses. And it's exciting to see their growth in the Lord, their spiritual growth. And the Bible lessons start very simply for children and progress as they get into courses for teens as well as adults. We have more than 30 books by different authors like D.L. Moody and G. Christian Weiss. And this picture was taken in our old office, which was in the industrial park of Chateauguay, and people phone in to give prayer requests and just to talk to somebody. We're up to 173 CDs of series of messages on different subjects. This one is on the radical mercy of God. So please pray for spiritual fruit from the radio ministry, as well as additional funds to expand the network. We were on 15 stations up to about a year ago, and we had to cut back. This is a picture of the cross right beside the church in Chateauguay, across the street from our office. And Missy took this photo a few years ago just near Ile Saint-Bernard, which is a wildlife reserve right next to the Chateauguay River. So our broadcast can be heard on the internet. So just as I can show you in my tie how Jesus loves all the people of the world, all the children of the world, we can share our faith and the message of the gospel with people through the internet. It's a wonderful way to reach people. We've had people write from Mexico, Hong Kong, and all over the world that are seeking the Lord. 13 years ago, there was an outreach in Quebec City and other areas of Quebec for the 400th anniversary of the city of Quebec City in 2008. And these Gospels of John were printed, Espoir or Hope 2008. I still have a few copies of these. If you have an opportunity to share the gospel with a French-speaking person, I'd be glad to give those to you as well. And if you'd like to see our courses afterwards, I'd be glad to show you in English as well as in French. And our current newsletter just came out this week, and it has the times of the radio broadcast. We're on Friday nights at 11 at night, Saturday mornings at 11, and Monday afternoons at 3. And so that's on there, so you don't have to memorize those times. And an answer to prayer is a station is being built in the area of Lachute in Brownsburg, and it's under the ministry of Aujourd'hui l'Espoir, Hope for Today. And that ministry in Quebec is a result of a ministry called Galcom. So this is the newsletter of Galcom, which was started by 3 men. One of them's a real close friend of Karen and me, Alan McGorrell. Alan's a lot like Pearl. I was thinking about Pearl this morning, that Alan is a senior with the energy of a 20-year-old. He just goes nonstop like an Energizer bunny, and the Lord has used him to have a vision for the people of Quebec. And so this radio station has been trying to get a license from the CRTC for at least 4 years. One of the engineers that was starting the project about 4 years ago passed away, and so there was a delay in finding another engineer to take his place. And just last year, I think in September, the CRTC granted the license for the station. It's 102.7 FM, and I believe they're going to be starting to broadcast in May. And then the goal is to have up to 100 repeater stations throughout Quebec in different locations. So that'll be a tremendous way to spread the gospel around Quebec. Thank you so much for your prayers for Karen and me, for our family. We've had our challenges over the last few years, some of you know, and the Lord is at work and he's answering prayers in our family life. I appreciate your continued prayers, because we're not in touch with one of our sons-in-law, and we're committing that to the Lord. But in the ministry, God is using people from many parts of the world to pray for the people of Quebec. And there's such a need, because less than 3%, there's different estimates of 1% up to 2 or 3% of the people of Quebec have a personal relationship with Jesus. So there's a great need and great opportunities. So thanks for your prayers.
I'm hearing the applause out that way over the internet. I'm hearing it. The 6 of us in the room don't hear it the same, eh? And you'll hear me better this way. Good afternoon, Grace Church. I'm overwhelmed and happy to be invited back, seeing as the last time I was here was your last service, and you don't blame me. So I do thank you very much. When last time I was here, I shared a very upbeat vision for what Camp Livingstone was going to do this year, and it totally didn't happen that way at all. And you can well relate, and I thank you for your prayers. I thank you for supporting your pastor, Jared, and everyone else who leaders on this team, for supporting people you know who are going through having to restructure, rethink, retool, pivot, all those words. Thank you for praying for them. Thank you for supporting them. Thank you for being on their side. So I want to just say that, James 4:13-15 hit me in the face here. Now listen, you who say today or tomorrow, we'll go to this city or that city, carry on business, make money. Why? You don't even know what will happen tomorrow. What is your life? You are a mist that appears for a little while, then vanishes. Instead, you ought to say, if it is the Lord's will, I will go and do this or that. Right? That hit us in the face really good. I also took to heart James, the beginning of James in chapter 1, verses 2-5 says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds." And we didn't always know what was going to happen. But God asks us to consider it pure joy, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work. That was my challenge, and that was probably a lot of our challenges. And still our challenge. to let it finish its work, because we're not out of this yet, but there's other stuff in life that we have to let finish its challenge too, eh? So that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. If any of you lacks wisdom, this was the best part. Let him ask God, who gives you generously without finding fault, and it'll be given to you. So for us, our ministry last year, we found ourselves like you. What do? We asked God. We committed ourselves to pray. It took a few weeks to get our legs under us, and then we said, hey, let's just pray for 2 weeks, and instead of putting the key in the door and calling it a year, let's ask God what he wants us to do. And we all came back as a team after 2 weeks, and it was a wonderful experience because we had a very, I would almost say, the same vision. And it was this idea came out. The big light bulb moment was a program called Missions at Livingstone. And the idea, we thought, was to develop mission-minded families while giving them an opportunity to grow as a family, build stronger relationships, and serve on mission together. There wasn't much youth mission going on in Quebec at that time, so we had to, this idea is like, this was an open door. We have an opportunity to bless family units who were stuck together, like mine was. So we did this mission at Livingstone. It was my highlight. I'd love to talk to you about it later. You can find information about it on our website because we're doing it again this year. So camplivingstone.ca, you can email me, give me a phone call. Love to talk to you more about it. It was one of the highlights, I'm going to say, and not just because of Mission at Livingstone. Last summer, even though our team was small, we had and they were all volunteer, it was probably my highlight year in 15 years. God showed his provision in meeting our needs, helped us pay the bills, which was a huge task when all your revenue is cut off at the knees, right? It was a huge task, and the Lord met it, and he let us see so many answers to prayer. I don't have time to tell you them all, but I would love to talk about them after. So I just want to say for all of you who have been part of that giving team, who've maybe responded a little bit more this year than you did in the past, I really need to say thank you. I need to say thank you for praying for Carol and I. Carol still struggles with headaches, pretty debilitating sometimes. She knows that people pray for her. She knows not necessarily when you do, but she knows that people are praying for her. So I'd ask you to keep her in prayer, that she would continue to be a light for Jesus, despite whatever she's suffering. Please do that. She says hi. My family says hi. My daughter Megan was with me last time. She wanted me to make sure I said hi. And nobody believes me when I tell them I'm going to say hi, so I did. There we go. You guys are thinking about having a mission conference, but not really. Missions Emphasis Week, something like that. Thank you for doing that. What I love about missions, and I like the low-key, no-pressure thing because I can talk free. You haven't pumped this up for months and months. Okay, good. Expectations are, okay, good. What I like about a missions emphasis is that for a bit, at least we start thinking outside of Verdun, right? You start thinking of outside of what I'm feeling right now, right? We start thinking about the other person. We start thinking about people that aren't like us, people who don't think like us, people who their systems are not even close to like us. We have concern, we start to develop compassion, and we think this is a good idea. And I think we need this more than ever, to be thinking outside of ourselves, because we're spending so much time with ourselves right now, right? The lack of ability to gather doesn't just affect church, it's affecting our whole country, it's affecting the world. Develops this lack of community. And what happens with the lack of community is it increases fear. It increases inability to understand others and their ability to understand us because they don't know us, right? Who can know who if they don't know anybody, right? I can't say that a second time. Physically, I don't think I can do it. So I want to look at our attitude toward missions, and hopefully let that attitude strengthen our attitude toward Christian life and our attitude perhaps toward our family and our home at the same time, so it doesn't just stop when we're thinking of missions, because it's really easy to really care about other cultures and other people when they're over there. But when they're here in my face and I'm not expecting it, then sometimes things happen. And I want to look at that a little bit. So I want to look at a missionary that we can maybe take an example from. I want to look at Jonah. Jonah is not necessarily the best case scenario of a missionary to look at, but I have a trick to finding Jonah. If you don't have the convenient bookmark that I do, I call it the table of contents. Because I could say between Amos and Micah, and I had to look at my notes for that, but that won't help you either. Jonah was being sent to a city called Nineveh, and I'm going to just, the text is short, so I'm going to read it in a second, but he's going to this city they're foreign, they're definitely foreign, they're definitely reputed to be evil, violent, not a good place. Enemies, they're amassing an army, they're amassing power, and eventually they're actually going to overthrow the northern kingdom of Israel. And so this Israelite, Jonah, is going to receive this message from the Lord. Here we go. And you think you're going to be happy to receive a message from the Lord, but here's Jonah's reaction. We're going to start at chapter 1. The word of the Lord came to Jonah, son of Amittai. Go to the great city of Nineveh and preach against it, because its wickedness has come up before me. Verse 3 is his attitude. But Jonah ran away from the Lord and headed for Tarshish. He went down to Joppa, where he found a ship bound for a port. I'm going to skip a bit. He ended up on a ship, ended up being... Well, actually, I'm not going to skip a bit. This is really good. Then the Lord sent a great wind on the sea, verse 4, and such a violent storm arose, and the ship was threatened to break up. Notice the Lord provided for Jonah, right? The Lord provided a wind. Not money, not health. He provided calamity. All sailors were afraid, and each cried out to his own God, and they threw cargo over the ship to lighten the ship. But Jonah went below deck, where he lay down and fell asleep. Not sure what he was thinking, but he did that. The captain went down and said, "How can you sleep? Get up, call on your God. Maybe he'll take notice so that we will not perish." Then the sailors said to each other, "Come, let's cast lots, find out who's responsible for this calamity." They cast lots, and the lot fell on Jonah. So they asked him, "Tell us, who is responsible for making all this trouble for us? What kind of work do you do? Where do you come from? What is your country? What people are you?" And he says, "I'm a Hebrew. I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, the one who made the sea and the land." This terrified them, and they asked, "What have you done?" They knew he was running away from the Lord, because he had already told them so. So the sea was getting rougher and rougher, and they asked him, What should we do to make the sea calm down for us?" And he knew it. He said, "Pick me up, throw me into the sea, and it will become calm. I know it's my fault that this great storm has come upon you." But instead, the men did their best to row back to land, but they could not, for the sea grew even wilder before them. Then they cried out to the Lord, "Please, Lord, do not let us die for taking this man's life. Do not hold us accountable for killing an innocent man, for you, Lord, have done as you pleased." And they took Jonah and threw him overboard. And the raging sea grew calm. And at this, the men greatly feared the Lord, and they offered sacrifice to the Lord and made vows to him. Now the Lord provided a second thing for Jonah. Again, not health and not wealth. He provided a huge fish that swallowed Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. My message is not going to be on the prayer that happens after that, but I'm going to skip to chapter 3. But you can look at chapter 2 in your spare time. Then the Lord came to Jonah a second time. At verse 10 of the chapter 2 said, "The Lord commanded the fish, and he vomited it up onto dry land." All right, chapter 3. The word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time. "Go to the great city of Nineveh and proclaim to it the message I give you." Jonah obeyed the word of the Lord. And he went to Jonah. Now, Nineveh was a very large city. It took 3 days to go through it. Jonah began by going a day's journey into the city, proclaiming, this is Jonah's message. This is Jonah's gospel. 40 more days and Nineveh will be overthrown. That's it. Verse 5, the Ninevites believed God. A fast was proclaimed, and all of them, from the greatest to the least, put on sackcloth. When Jonah's warning reached the king of Nineveh, he rose from his throne, took off his royal robes, covered himself with sackcloth, laid down in the dust, and this is a proclamation, it says, by the decree of the king of the nobles, do not let people or animals, herds or flocks taste anything. Do not let them eat or drink, but let the people and animals be covered with sackcloth. Let everyone call urgently on God. Let them give up their evil ways and violence. Who knows? God may yet relent, and with compassion turn from his fierce anger so that we will not perish. And when God saw what they did and how they turned from their evil ways, he relented and did not bring on them the destruction he had threatened. It's a great story. But I'm going to ask, has Jonah's attitude changed? For chapter 4. But to Jonah, this seemed very wrong, and he became angry. He prayed to the Lord, "Isn't this what I said, Lord, when I was still at home? What I was trying to forestall by fleeing to Tarshish? I knew that you were a gracious God and compassionate God, slow to anger, abounding in love, a God who relents from sending calamity. Now, Lord, take my life." Oops, sorry about that. "For it is better for me to die than live." But the Lord replied, "Is it right for you to be angry?" Jonah had gone out and sat down in a place east of the city. He basically went out there to pout. And he made himself a shelter and sat in the shade and waited to see what would happen to the city. And when the Lord provided, again, the Lord's provision, he provided a leafy plant. And he made it grow up over Jonah to give him shade on his head. And it would ease his discomfort. And Jonah was very happy about the plant. But at dawn the next day, the Lord provided a worm, which chewed the plant so that it withered. And then the sun rose, and God provided a scorching east wind. And the sun blazed on Jonah's head, so that he grew faint, and he wanted to die. And he said, "It would be better for me to die than live." But God said to Jonah, "Is it right for you to be angry about the plant?" "It is," he said. "I'm so angry, and I wish I were dead." But the Lord said, "You have been concerned about this plant. Though you didn't tend it or make it grow, it sprang up overnight and died overnight. And should I not have concern for the great city of Nineveh, in which there are more than 120,000 people who cannot tell their right hands from their left, and so many animals?" I wanted to do a missions attitude check. No, Jonah obviously had problems understanding God. And I want to bring out 3 points, and I'll try to be quick, is that Jonah's eyes saw things very differently than God saw them. And I think we can even if you wanted to take this whole sermon and video and just back it up a little bit, Jared's prayer kind of culminates to what I'm trying to get at, is that we don't always line up our thoughts and our minds with who God is and what he's trying to do. And the reality is that while Jonah saw Nineveh, God saw the Ninevites. God saw those people. Jonah would only want to go if it mattered to him, if the people were people he respected, if they were like him, if he had a little list and Nineveh wasn't on it. Jonah also believed that Israel was chosen by God to receive God's blessing, where Nineveh did not receive that. And therefore, by God asking him to go there, it was like a menial task of like cleaning the bathrooms or something. Like, why do you want me to go there? Surely you're not going to try and bless that nation. That's surely not going to happen. And if you do, I'm going to be really angry about it. So does your heart need a check? And one of the things I want to talk about today is that I want to ask you a question. Are you angry? Just like Jonah, just like God asked Jonah, is it right for you to be angry? And sometimes we get angry. Do you ever get angry? Proverbs 29:11 says, "Fools give full vent to their rage, but the wise bring calm in the end." How many of our social media posts bring calm in the end? Well, a lot of them do, but I think there's some that don't. Even if the words we say we think are wise, if they don't bring calm in the end, I don't think it qualifies. Some people even use, and I heard this week actually on a podcast, is that some people even take the fact that Jesus got angry as justification for their own anger. I'm okay. It's okay for me to be angry because I'm right. I don't know. I'm not sure last time being angry made you right, but even, and I'll agree that Jesus was righteous in his anger, but I know that Jesus was willing to lay down his rights and his life and to die, not for the world, but for Shmuel, who is taking the money for the money changing in the temple. He was dying for that guy. Right? He was willing, and he was going to do that week. Right? It wasn't going to be next year or somewhere down the road, right? I wonder how many times are we justified in our anger? How many times does it really amount to anything? And I think that sometimes we get angry because we think we're going to lose something. We think we're going to lose our rights, our privileges, looking weak, be embarrassed. I don't see anything in the Bible ever asks us to fight for any of that, right? We do it out of fear too. Fear happens. Sometimes we're not angry, we're just afraid. Fear of man will prove to be a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord will be kept safe. Things we have to do that are hard right now, I know that God wants to redeem it. He wants to use it for good. But sometimes we just don't believe it. Right? We're not sure that all things work together for good to them that love God and are called according to his purpose. We're not sure if that's true because we're not always sure, and we don't always see that God is at work. And if you notice through the story of Jonah, God was at work every step of the way. I mean, the people, he said, throw me overboard and you're going to be okay, but they didn't even want to throw him overboard. Right? But then they finally did, and they say, and they all turned to God. Right? And that was just on the ship. You look at the fantastical elements of the story, and you wonder which is more fantastical. The fact that Jonah was swallowed up by a huge fish, kept in there for 3 days and vomited up on the shore, or the fact that he went to Nineveh afterwards with that message, 40 days and you're going to die, and the entire town of Nineveh said, oh, I got to pay attention to that guy. But God's not fooled. God's plan never got derailed because Jonah decided to get on a ship and pay a fare to Tarshish. In reality, God's miracles are very calculated sometimes. And if you look up online and you find out what the pagan god of Nineveh was at that time, it was a guy named Dagon. And if you look up for a picture of Dagon, it's a man who's half fish and half man. So all of a sudden here Jonah's like spit up on the shore, and then he goes into this town and proclaims this thing. Maybe there's a witness behind him going, holy mackerel, what was that? You know, a lot of their messengers, they came from the sea. And so here he is, Jonah comes into town and says this incredible, stupid message that who in their right mind would believe you if you went into a town you don't know anybody and show up and say, this is what's going to happen to you, 40 days and you're going to die. But then there's the guys coming up behind him going, that guy just got thrown up by a fish. That's the guy I told you about. The entire town believed him. The king believed him. They didn't dismiss him. 40 days isn't very long. It's not like he had a whole campaign to go through. We need to trust God, even when we don't understand, even when we can't see his purpose, even when we're not sure that he will accomplish his purpose for our good. We need to trust him. And another thing about our message is that we need to be sure that we understand that God takes no pleasure in death and judgment. That's one of the things that Jonah was sure of. He wanted judgment on that city. He wanted judgment on whoever wasn't him. But God takes pleasure in righteousness and justice. Is it right for you to be angry? Is sort of the key question I underlined twice when I was going through this story. And I wonder about the world's view of Christians at this point. And if you listen to the news, you listen to social media, well, they don't have an accurate view of Christians, in my opinion, because they seem to be calling us racists, bigots, hate mongers, you name it, right? But I know that they don't know me. How can they? If they knew me, they would never believe that. And I'm trusting a lot of you feel the same way. But the reality is they don't. They don't know you. Well, who does? Are we known? And what are you known for? And I really hope it's not for what we're angry about. But sometimes it is. Personally, I'm not always drawn toward people who aren't like me. I really am. I'm not. But you know what? Every time my heart burns with compassion for someone who's not like me, or asks me to be a voice, or ask me to stand up for someone who can't do it for himself, I know that's God living up, speaking out of me. I know that's God working inside me. He wants to mold my heart, and he wants to give me eyes to see like him. So I'm thinking, if we're going to have a missions emphasis weekend, I think our attitude should reflect missions. You know, we need to look at the world the way that God sees it. And that's not possible unless we align ourselves with him. See, God looks at the world with love and compassion and a desire to lay himself down for them. For Justin Trudeau. For François Legault. For our mayor. For the neighbor next door who keeps having people over and you're going, come on! Do we trust that God is establishing his church on earth as it is in heaven? Even if we can't meet in person? Even if we can't have camp the way I'd normally have it? I want to have camp. Well, it's going to be good, but it'll be different again. A lot of day camps this year. The good news is that Jesus laid down his rights and privileges and suffered the punishment we deserved so that we could be restored to him. And you know what? We can do that personally, but he means it to be both. Not just me and God, but us together to look like him. I'm going to pray, but before I do, if you're listening to this and that anger is just always present in your life, I don't know, fear, anger, does a Christian no good? You need to give it up. And one of the ways we can do that is by fostering community. Reach out. I know the leadership here would say, hey, talk to me, that's good, but the person you're watching this with, talk to them, pray with them. But we need to hold each other accountable. We need to reflect the heart of Christ, right? I'm going to pray. Lord, help us to surrender ourselves to you, even if we don't understand what's going on. Lord, as we slog through this life, Lord, I pray that we would consider pure joy because we know you. I pray that we'd consider it pure joy because we know that our testing would produce perseverance, which is going to produce maturity and fullness in you. Lord, thank you, and I'm going to give thanks to you for things that are hard. And I pray, Lord, that you would continue to raise up people alongside us that would help us, that would hold us accountable, that would help us through the times that are hard. And if Lord, there's some, I know I touched on a couple things, Lord, but if there are people who are just crippled with fear or anger, Father, I pray that they would reach out, past themselves, Lord, you've provided a body of believers who love you. And Lord, I pray that they would confess their need one to another. Lord, help us not to live Christian life in a box. Lord, that you would be making light shine from us because of who you are. Help us to be true salt and light on the earth. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you for your time, guys. Have me back anytime.